Well, so we're live. We're going to skip the introduction song today because I'm feeling, I don't know. I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. Oh, hey, Cartoonica says I'm just going to be in the chat tonight. That's fine. That's fine. So, behind stage. So, guys, first of all, before I get started, before I jump into things, I want to say a hearty welcome back to Twitless.
Hello.
From his very many away from us adventures. Which none of them were fun or exciting, I'm sure.
We missed you.
Yes,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
sweet. I miss you too.
Yeah. Well, Isaac Larkin says hello. Hello, Isaac.
And I did my best to represent you in the argument about the new World's Finest thing with the two kids and the Wonder Woman kid.
Oh, okay, cool.
So what was it? You specifically said that you do not like the World's Finest backups.
Oh, I hate it.
And we didn't get very far into it, but general, we don't need to go point by point. That was like the point of last week's show. But what specifically don't you like? I'm really curious to hear this.
Oh, that's fine. I just I think it's a taste preference thing. So it's really, I'm not gonna say like make grand pronouncements, but I like my superheroes as my escapist fantasies. And when it's, oh, this is Superman, but not Superman because it's his kid. And this is Batman, but it's not Batman because it's the kid. And it's just like I was never a fan of Muppet Babies either. Where it's just give me the Muppets. I don't need Muppet but kid. And that's basically where I'm at. I'm like, I just want the superheroes. If we have another 10 pages, I either want these kids to be very different characters. Because if it's been like Nightwing, at least he has his own identity, or Robin, that kind of thing. But when it's like I'm just the same but immature and annoying, I just like tune out. I just want to read more about the superheroes I'm here for. That's basically it.
The one story that I really wanted your input on was the one where they're riffing on the man who has everything. And
the Black Mercy? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I thought you would just hate that story. That one particularly.
Yeah.
I think I skimmed it. I was just like, whatever. I
actually brought up that it's kind of a drug reference the way they use it. So
yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
So the thing is I think that I see where you're coming from with it. But as somebody who did like the Muppet Babies as a child, part of that was when Muppet Babies was on the air and I was young. I was the target audience, age appropriate target audience when that was coming out. But also the idea about imagination and fancy was something that really is engaging to me. And so when my children were small, there was a program that was similar, but it was original. It was called the Backyardigans, and it was anthropomorphic little animal children having imaginary adventures in the backyard. Yeah. And so I really enjoyed watching that with the kids when they were toddlers and preschoolers, because that was the same kind of thing that I appreciated about Muppet Babies when I was quite small too.
Twitless's comparison to Muppet Babies is particularly apt because the problem with the Muppet Babies is that it doesn't exist. I mean, the Muppet Babies appear in the third movie because Miss Piggy says, what would it have been like if we were kids and we knew each other as kids? Because they all met as adult puppets, adult Muppets. They never met before. So this is a fantasy. And yet it's a fantasy that went on to be a cartoon that had hundreds of episodes. And and it's not real. It's not real Kermit. It's not something that really happened to Kermit when he was a kid.
Yeah, and the thing I enjoyed about the World's Finest, just to go on real quick, is I liked first of all, I think Tom King is wasted on superhero comics. I think he uses the language of slice of life anyway, so doing something that's basically a slice of life comic is a better fit for his style to begin with.
Yeah.
The other thing is I felt the scenarios in at least the ones that I read were enjoyable enough. And it wasn't Tom King ruining, any of the main characters. So
that Tom King should not be writing superhero comics is something we can all agree in.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know, because I'm going to be the one defending these Wonder Woman issues today, I think.
Okay. Well, good.
I have things. I have things to defend. Again, as I've mentioned before with this series, it was like a roller coaster for me. There are things I really like, and then it'll be like a dip, and I'll be like, "What the hell are you doing? This is the worst thing ever." And then it'll come back up, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's really great. This is one panel was amazing." And
yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's great in concept, and I cannot wait till we get to issue 14, which I will not describe. But if I described it to you, it would sound like a great story, except that it is not. In execution, it fails, despite the fact that it sounds like it's a really good plot.
See, and here's the frustrating thing about this is like last week, Hutch in the back rooms, Hutch read 14, and he said we have to go to, this is something we must discuss. And see, I was really hoping to be done at 6.
Well, you know what's weird? Okay, one of the things before we actually, and then we should probably just jump into the comics themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do want to bring this up because it has to do with the run itself. So just kind of like a structural housekeeping sort of thing. Is the comic runs to about like issue it's like 10 or so, and then what ends up happening is
wait, what just happened? What just happened?
What do you know? Oh, goodness, he just joined us.
Yeah, you guys made me join you. Thanks a lot.
Well, welcome to the show.
I was going to say it was going to be a perfect little swap out because I can't stand World's Finest, and apparently you can't stand the Wonder Woman run. So,
I realized that I might as well be here for Twitless's return. So,
aw, that's sweet.
Hey, Matt, if you would like to just describe, if we want to just go through 4 through 6, and then I can just tell you about 14, and we don't have to actually review 14.
So
at least that is the one part where, if you remember from last week, I had something to say about that.
So let me jump in here for a second, because the thing runs to like issue 10 or so, and then it actually takes like a 3 or 4 issue break because of the Absolute Power tie-in, which derails everything. Yeah. And then it says, and then it goes like, well, back to your regularly scheduled program. So we have a couple of options because it's not actually reading all 14. If you skip those Absolute Power, we could just note, hey, here's what happened in Absolute Power. Here's how it derailed everything Tom King was doing. And the editors, the group editors are out of their minds. It's nuts.
Haven't we agreed in the past that editors don't actually exist?
No. But this is like, I'm not even talking about the book editor. I'm talking the group editors, the ones who talk about like what's going on in the universe at large. Because they literally have in the Absolute Power, just to kind of like give a brief overview to the audience, the storyline that's currently running with the Sovereign being like the true power behind the throne of America. And, this is something we need to be worried about. Mark Waid basically just writes a crossover event with the exact same pitch and includes the entire DC universe. And then Tom King's story essentially gets put on pause so that he can run a story that's essentially very much the same pitch to then say, well, here's my story again. And it's like, it's just the most.
So wait, so do the secret king, do the two secret kings of the universe ever like meet for like fisticuffs or chess?
No,
or drinking competitions or anything?
It's Amanda Waller. She takes over like the whole world.
That's right.
And with the Brainiac Queen, who we saw from House of Brainiac, and so she does this whole thing, but it's the exact same idea of like secret power behind America taking over the world. But she does it, as opposed to just having a private war with Wonder Woman, it's like all of the DC universe for the entire world. And then they resolve that. And then it's back to your regularly scheduled program. Here's Sovereign, who's the real power behind America. And it was like, well, are we even going to address any? Nope, just
no, not a touch. Just, that's amazing.
It's almost like I said, it's that's what I'm saying. Like a group editor doing any amount of work.
So the question then is Tom King just writing his id into this? Anyway,
it's funny.
So Brother Eves says, I see the fig is back. I don't know which fig you mean.
That'd be me.
I've got the is that you?
He's a fig?
Is he making fun of Twitless?
Yes, he's making that's what's happening.
I thought maybe my fig pins had been invisible in a previous stream or something.
I feel
also,
seen.
Where did that Skeletor mini come from? I don't remember putting that there.
Well, if we want to cover issues 4 through 6. We should talk
Yeah,
about
we definitely got to get running.
Sorry. I just had a moment of I don't even know what it is. Anyhow, so
let me give a summary. Because like I'm real good at summaries. Okay.
Before we get to summary too much, let's pick up where we left off previously, because it's been a while.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Right.
Okay, so we left off issue 3. So this is essentially a war against the Amazons versus the U.S. government, and the U.S. government
has never happened before, so it's super new and fresh.
Yeah. Well, this one's very much framed in the guise of modern day political discourse. It's just
as was the last one.
So that's true.
But that was like 15 years ago.
So this is our current political moment. So it's more relevant to that. So we have the Amazons being treated kind of like they're immigrants, essentially migrants, and the U.S. government's going to take them all out. The U.S. government's going to deport them all, essentially, and that's the general pitch. There's an inciting incident. There's an Amazon who kind of does a little like she does a little thing. She kills a bunch of guys in a bar.
It's like 27 guys.
And Wonder Woman's like, okay, she gets involved, and she's going to have essentially a private war with America, and that's when we realize that America is not America. America is ruled by the sovereign, this guy who is the actual king of America, who rules with the lasso of lies as opposed to the lasso of truth. And the lasso of lies is the thing that he gets to rope young men like a Joe Rogan podcast and then say, you were emasculated by that woman, weren't you? You should go kill yourself. I'm not kidding. That happens in the story.
And that is where that suicide is where issue 3 ends and issue 4 begins.
So, see, Wonder Woman is basically trying to fight back against the power, the patriarchy. Literally, the sovereign is the patriarchy, essentially. So,
he's old and bald. He's not Joe Rogan.
Yeah. No, you. What's funny is there was a recent Blue Beetle graphic novel that. Absolutely, they don't even like. Tom King is at least kind of disguising some of these elements a little bit under a layer of superhero fantasy. The new Blue Beetle graphic novel, we should take a look at it sometime. Literally, just has one of Blue Beetle's classmates just goes down the alt-right pipeline through podcasts, and they literally just put some of the. Is it Geeks and Gamers they put in there? It's just very transparent who they're signaling is there. And it's like, and that's how he became an evil white supremacist who we have to, take down. So like, it's common thing, a common thread, and it's only going to increase after what just happened last week. So,
So anyhow,
issue 5. Or sorry,
I would like to say that the one thing about the Sovereign's design is it is interesting to me that he looks far much more like Joe Biden than I was expecting when I heard about the story. they kept him looking like Trump by just making him look like a generic old guy. But it turns out that Joe Biden does look like generic old guy. So take that for what it's worth.
I think Tom King is trying to add in his mind. I think he's trying to be more nuanced. And I to be fair, he's more nuanced than the guy who wrote that Blue Beetle comic. So that's not saying much. It's a low bar. Yeah. But issue 4 of Wonder Woman.
And I've got a screen share just about ready here. Yeah. So
in the last issue, the president made a big announcement, and basically the sovereign is in the room with him in the Oval Office, telling him exactly what to say. And when the president says, well, I think it would be best if we avoided this, is no. When I tell you what to say, that's what you say. You don't come back with, I think something. No. I'm in charge here. And he gets this guy to bow down and kiss his ring. It's so angering, obviously, and it's like, how can this be true? Because this guy claims to have been behind the power of America all the way back to George Washington. Yeah. Even George Washington had to bow to this secret king who's actually in charge of America.
Right. And so here's the great thing about issue 2, I think, had a big fight scene. Issue 3 has the fallout from the fight scene. All this kind of weird stuff going on there. And then in issue 4, we start with all of these news reports because, of course, Tom King can't do anything but rip off Alan Moore and
Frank Miller.
Frank Miller. I shouldn't say that, to be fair. I mean, honestly, it's a decent tactic. The problem with is there's so many words on every panel, and there's so much repetition in each of these things. So, it's one of those things where it's like you honestly could have done about half of this and still got the point across, and still used your fun literary device.
Yeah.
But
so if I can give just a brief overview,
boring.
let me give a brief overview. So the main pitch of the issue here for issue 4 is Sovereign is continuing to express his power in the background, so we definitely have the threat of that. And then Agent Steel is basically working with Sovereign and Waller as well, but mostly for Sovereign to kind of again create this plan of how they're going to fight back against Wonder Woman after she clowned on them all.
Which is, I've mentioned this before. It's one of the biggest crimes of this series is what they're doing to Sarge Steel.
Mm-hmm.
They're really it's shameful. It's just shameful.
But the main pitch here of this story, and this is the thing I think is interesting that I wanted to talk about as a positive, as we could dive into this a little bit. The main thrust of this issue is Wonder Woman taking a young boy who's I think suffering from cancer, and takes a boy to Themyscira, to Paradise Island, to Amazon women's only, no boys allowed island. And in the flying in the face of all of the rules or traditions and that say no men allowed. And
so, there are so many questions that I have about this whole sequence.
But let me just come out and say that the pitch of this, there's two things that are kind of juggling around in my mind. First off, Wonder Woman is the feminist superhero from day one. Whether you like it or not, that is just there. So one thing that's always been in the back of my mind with Tom King's writing, whether I like it or not, is the fact that if I dislike something about Tom King's writing, is it because I dislike something that Tom King is doing with the story, or is it because I have an issue with the ideology? Because the simple fact of the matter is, anyone writing Wonder Woman well, and in character or in spirit of what its original intentions, I mean, she's the feminist superhero.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you write a feminist superhero if you had the chance in DC's world, is essentially my counter to some of the thoughts we might be having here. Well, because here what we have is we have she's breaking the feminist rules for the feminist island. This is a story this is Tom King. The pitch of this thing is essentially a feminist story for boys, is what Tom King is attempting in this issue. I find that to be a very fascinating idea, and how it plays out is also fascinating to explore. How do you write a feminist story for boys? And this is what Tom King thinks.
In your academic approach to it, I appreciate the questions that you're getting at.
Gotcha.
However, none of that changes how silly this whole story is. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why really quick. I mean, even conceptually silly, right?
Okay.
Because this is not this is not a gap issue between major story arcs, right? This is not the Christmas issue. This is not some sort of gap thing fill in. This is okay. Diana Prince is on the run from the cops. She has invaded the secret government aid operations. The spy networks are out after her, and so people are literally dying in this story. The stakes, she's going against the government because the stakes are so high, because they're looking to deport and they're willing to kill any Amazons who aren't going willingly. Mm. And so Diana says, you know what? I've got 2 free days. Let's go ahead and make it and open my letter from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Right. Oh man, I can't believe I didn't get to this sooner. Yeah. I have to stop everything about this story so that I can give Tom King his childhood fantasy.
Yeah, that is one of the major problems I have with Tom King so far, is that he doesn't craft a story. It's like all of a sudden, chapter 4 is the Make-A-Wish Foundation story that could have gone anywhere in any issue of this series, but is instead in an arc, and it is taking up valuable arc time for it to go off on its own thing. And it does have bits and pieces, like the parents are like, they actually are on the side of all the people who don't like the Amazons right now, but at the same time, their son wants his favorite superhero to be with him for a day. And they're like, okay, well, we're okay with you. We're not okay with you being here, but this is what he wants.
So
And
go ahead.
go ahead.
I would like to say, like, I mean, this is one of these things where we look at the story in its context. We need to look at the story in its exclusion too. Like you and I, Twitless, have talked about for years about Kingdom Come, and where I hate Kingdom Come. Largely, I don't like this. I don't care for the story in itself, but I especially don't like what it did to the DC universe. Whereas when you tell me repeatedly, you say, "But Rhys, shut up and take a look at the story itself."
Right.
And so I do want to say that, like, touching on my agreement about how this seems misplaced doesn't necessarily reflect on this story itself.
Sure. No, it's fair to point both of those out. Yeah. But now that you set that up, let's actually then transition into the story itself as well. Because I think it's fair to point that out. I think I could make a defense. But it's actually more interesting to dive into. What do you think of the story itself on its own merits, apart from the fact that it does feel a bit like, and now for something completely different.
I think that there is something very, very, this may be the best written Wonder Woman is in all the 6 issues that I've read so far. Right. Where she is, like, in terms of her personality, she's not, there's no need for her to balance the bellicose and the comforting natures of Wonder Woman. She doesn't come across as abrasive for the most part. There's some weirdness when she gets to the Amazons. But that also that ties into her. She's taking on like a motherly role. And I think that makes her very appealing. You very easily can buy that she's the in much of the series, I can't buy that she's actually supposed to be the good person, the good guy, right?
Yeah.
But I have no problem seeing that she's the good guy in this story.
This is the low bar, by the way, that was set. That's the low bar of how well Wonder Woman is written here.
What do you think?
Out of 6 issues.
There's been some talk. I mean, Richard Meyer brought this up, I think, but there has been some talk about like her new catchphrase that Tom King's trying to give her. Which is "No, thank you."
No, thank you. I think it's awful.
Wait, I was gonna say, what do you think of that?
It's so nonsensical.
No, thank you.
Hello, Megan.
Yes. Like, no, thank you. That shows up in like the flashbacks in issue 3, and 2 and 3 both. And when she goes on, retells her origin story and how she got to be the envoy and all this kind of stuff.
Spoiler alert: Tom King tries to make this her war cry.
What?
I'm serious.
That's the scene I was talking about. I'm sorry, it was not in issue 3. It was in issue 4. I
Abigail picks it up perfectly.
The thing about catchphrases is that most famous catchphrases in history have actually been decided by the audience.
Yes.
Right.
You can almost never properly plan one.
I'm gonna say this, and you tell me if you think I'm crazy here, Twitless. I'm not. This is just a gut reaction.
Yeah.
I had not picked up on that being a battle cry. I mean, it makes sense once you said it, I instantly knew what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I hadn't picked up on it yet though, but I honestly feel like the Tick's battle cry of spoon is more authentic than no thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, no thank you is the battle cry of Karen's. I mean,
there's something. Well, like, the battle cry of Karen is I need to speak to your manager.
It's your manager, yeah, but that's the same. That's the same thing.
I see what he's going for, and there's something. One of the things I was going to defend about this issue, even being kind of something different, and this ties in with some of the version of feminism that I think is kind of being alluded to here, because there've been many different types of feminism, and Wonder Woman herself has embodied many types of feminism. So what's interesting is you go back to her early incarnation in the 1940s, in the golden age of superhero comics. Superheroes took a while to kind of get their moral code of like preserving life. So initially you had superheroes like, hey, you're a bad guy. Here, I'm going to toss a grenade at you and watch you explode. So Wonder Woman was actually the opposite of that. She was actually one of the first superheroes to come in and be like, I'm not going to just kill you. I'm going to she would even Nazi agents. I'm going to reform you through the healing power of love and BDSM at weird sororities. And
It's true.
I would say I am not exaggerating. This
No,
happened.
that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
the
and actually, this is. I'll get on that. I want to circle back to that in a second.
Well, so my point here is the fact that Wonder Woman went from that and then went through this weird kind of like Greek warrior goddess arc where it's like I'm snapping necks, I'm chopping people with swords. And so Tom King is trying to like actually lean her back more towards some this more this less violent version. And so as opposed to having a war cry of like rah, it's this he's trying the attempt, even if it's not landing, his attempt is to create a sort of firm but not aggressive stance, and that's where that no thank you line comes from. Even if she's punched you in the face, it's not going to be rah, it's going to be like no thank you, like polite sit down kind of a thing. Your mother's here and talking like that's right. Kind of, and the Dami Mommy is where Tom King's version of Wonder Woman is, but it's a more gentle version, definitely I think a little less sexual than Marston's one version was as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And going back to the very origins of Wonder Woman, I need to point out two things. One, Fizchozo, am I saying it right? Yeah. And Fizchozo and I think Isaac were talking about how, having a whole American storyline with Wonder Woman is kind of weird because she's not Captain America, except that she was Captain America back when she was the other Captain America back during
one of the most patriotic, more patriotic than Superman, actually.
She immigrated to America and she loved America and she joined the American military.
She's the only superhero of those 1940s crowd, apart from Captain America, who like worked for the U.S. government specifically.
Yeah. And she loved Steve. and was like head over heels in love with Steve in a way that you can't have a female character now. So modern Wonder Woman doesn't love America and kind of loves Steve, depending on who's writing her at the time. And here she's written to really love Steve, which is cool, but she not enough to marry him. And we were talking before you, when you were gone, about the oddity of what is up with their relationship, because it's so back and forth.
Rhys, can you pull up the double page spread? Because that was something I really want to laugh at.
Okay.
And I'm not even going to tell the audience what I'm laughing at. I'm just going to point at this out and say that someone missed the imagery, considering it's in the issue. It's the big double page spread where they're on Paradise Island.
Okay.
Yeah, pull that one up for the audience. The audience needs to see this. So Tom King wrote this in, I believe this issue is from 2024. So he and the artist knew the year they were going into when they created this issue. And yeah, so tell me, what are these characters wearing? Let's see if the chat because like especially the bottom of the page, it was like Wonder Woman and this boy are hanging out, and then we get this wonderful moment at the bottom of the page where Wonder Woman is wearing a freaking red hat.
I would not have picked up on that.
So I'm sitting there going like, there's no way Tom King has to be smarter than this. Like he has to have known like what that. What themes were like and the smile she's wearing, and I'm like, that's literally like what the president. Just never mind.
It's and especially on top of the tiara she's wearing it, so it's got that real Joe Biden in the firehouse vibe.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, I don't know, like life imitates art. But that just cracks me the hell up.
So the whole thing about taking the boy to Paradise Island way back when, there was a whole thing about no man's feet could even touch Paradise Island, or they would lose their immortality forever. And that was that's one of those things that's inconsistent. But I know Perez actually had a thing where that was they declared that's no longer the rule, and men could walk around on Paradise Island. So I have no idea what the status of that is now, but I assume.
I feel like all they're ever doing is having to fix, if you can call it that, the original lore.
Yeah, but
but
then this boy thinks he's a girl, so maybe it's okay that he does because he thinks he's a girl, and that would be the whole nother can of worms they're opening up. But
yeah, I think that men could go to Paradise Island in the Golden Age.
Wait, who? The men during?
The
No,
men.
they were not allowed. No. That's
No. I mean, I think I'm sure that I remember reading a story where some guys snuck on.
No, so yeah, but it was for
they weren't allowed, but it wasn't like a magical issue where they lose their immortality or anything. I think it was just like a rule, like a government rule.
They just weren't allowed.
Yeah. They just weren't allowed. Yeah. So, but one of the things I really wanted to take some time to point out, as silly as I think this idea is in some ways, at the same time, I also really love the mechanics of the way they did the invisible plane, because I've always loved since the time I was small. I thought the invisible plane was such a cool idea. I don't know why. Looking back at Super Friends and Wonder Woman just sitting in the air, flying around, I don't know why I thought that was the coolest thing. But for some reason I did, probably because I love planes.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they did the art on this stuff, I thought was just really fun. So I wanted to take some time to highlight. You've got the cockpit is see-through except where it's not.
Yeah.
And
how does he know where to put his feet?
I think he's just trusting her because that's where she put her feet.
Yeah, it's still he doesn't seem. I don't know. I would be like, as I'm walking up there.
Here's where the page starts. It's not, I don't want to be scared, right? So he's like, it's not even there. Like, can I even trust it? It's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, landing a plane in a driveway, that takes some serious skill.
Well, I assume it's a VTO.
They must have some VTOL going on there, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's always been the case, I think. Even before VTOL was a thing. It was her magic plane, you know?
It is in fact magic.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of the backstory. Amanda Waller's there, Sarge Steele is there.
Yeah.
And so they have I like that the invisibility is switch offable, and then you have the Super Friends moment where where they see and where they can see that there is no plane or whatever.
Yeah.
Even the stick and the controls. Like, can you imagine you're flying along in this invisible plane, and the conditions go bad, and you can't see to turn the switch back on so you can fly by the instruments. So your instrument rating just means nothing.
I mean, like the plane has always been you just kind of have to just roll with it.
I know,
because that one's.
They couldn't have just made it a normal plane and said you've got Amazonian magic to make it invisible.
I think she's used her like almost psychic powers at times to operate it. Like, it's just like whatever.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, you know, the idea of batarangs. They don't really work if you understand physics, but we still pretend they do because that's what we like. So,
well, you know, that was the one thing that Perez ditched when he reinvented them, was that there was no invisible plane. She just flies and runs at the speed of Mercury. But then I believe it was John Byrne 100 issues later, when he was brought on to kind of salvage it, he kind of redid his own little semi revamp. And one of the things he did was he had some kind of plasticky thing that shape changes. It could be like horse pulling a sled. It could be whatever, and she could make it into the shape of a plane or whatever, and it's sort of plasticky and it's not invisible.
Right. And at one point that was like her secret headquarters was actually that device, and it could be this great temple and pillar. And that was and I believe she got that from a group of Amazonians who had gone walkabout and built their own little other civilization.
Yeah,
I think that was a whole storyline there. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
I liked how in Smallville season 11 they just made it a stealth jet.
Yeah, but it was more like a mentally controlled thing that you don't even need controls to fly it. It's just and she always had a mentally controlled robot plane, so that kind of works with the history. So
it's just fun to make fun of. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it is.
So they get to Paradise Island, and it's a big scene because the Amazons are like, you can't be here. And she's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, see, that doesn't come across as that's a
turn back or be turned. The choice is yours, princess. No, thank you. Like, that's not an appropriate answer to that question.
Actually, you know what it reminds me of, though? Has everyone seen that scene with Christopher Walken? Put your hands up. No, I don't want to.
Yeah. That's definitely the energy he's going for. But just saying no, thank you in this circumstance is not an appropriate answer to the question. Am I the only one of us who at one point was a big fan of the TV show Community?
I'm not a big fan, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
I watched it once.
I really enjoyed the first 4 seasons. And then the more times I watched them, the more the later seasons soured on me. But the first season is pretty good. But there's
show about
moment,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a show about community college. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is there's this character Britta, and she's going on talking about, I can't remember the exact course of the joke, but one of the other students, Annie, says, "Britta, you never respond appropriately to anything." And Britta answers, "Oh, thank you." and that's the energy of this page.
Yeah. Yeah, I never picked up on the fact that this was something she's repeating a lot as kind of her thing. It doesn't really work.
I did recognize it as being a thing, but I didn't realize it was a thing. I was just like, well, that's a weird thing to say. Why would you say it here?
Yeah.
But definitely, I would never have imagined it was some sort of battle cry. That's just hilarious. So, the basic premise of this part of the thing is that she goes to Paradise Island, and the Amazon's like, "You can't be here," and she's like, "I can so," and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna have to go talk to the Queen," and they go talk to the Queen, who is filling in because, and I think in this continuity, Hippolyta's dead.
See, that's the thing. I have no idea what happened with her mother, and it's never explained.
Yeah, I believe Hippolyta's dead and has gone on to Olympus, and then like the Nubia is not on the island for some reason, and so there's another person filling in, and the person filling in gives this big long speech about how the laws and la 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 la, and I will rule exactly like the Hippolyta would rule if she was here, and Nubia would rule if she was here, and well, you get to do whatever you want because you're the princess. Well, that's awesome. Where's the island where I get to do whatever I want?
I mean, she's royalty. Like, that's essentially like how royalty works. Here are all the laws, and you're the king or queen or princess. So it'd be nice if you followed them.
Wouldn't it be great if you weren't such a dink? Well, I guess I can't do nothing anyway.
But I want to really bring up the fact that we have, again, from the feminist storytelling perspective, we have a very interesting situation where you have this female-only space that's supposed to be protected from men, and yet she brings a boy here, and that's treated from the narrative not as this great violation. We're on Wonder Woman's side. The Tom King writes this as this is good that this has happened.
You need to let boys into women's spaces. It's super important.
Rhys, does that surprise you that Tom King would say that?
Well, no. I don't think there's any place Tom King would rather be than in women's spaces.
Oh,
wow. But from a sort of feminist storytelling place, this is interesting. This brings an interesting complication to a feminist narrative, which Wonder Woman very much is. This idea that, like, in order for her, because, like, in a way, you can see some of these things being played with, the fact that autocratic power, right? She's resisting that, which is very much a feminist sort of thing to do, but she's doing it by supporting a boy invading the women's power structure space, even though they're at war with the male space in America. So that's, to me, this is, it would not surprise me if Tom King takes some heat from the feminists over this. But it's a very interesting choice for him to do this. And he's playing around with some, arguably some feminist ideas while he does it.
Yeah.
So I out of all of the issues in this run so far, this one in particular, I think, is going to be the one that merits some, some articles being written about it because of what's being played with here.
So here's the pinnacle of this issue. Then I think we need to move on because we spent a lot of time talking about the girly boy on Paradise Island, It's not probably not fair. He's not really girly. He's just a child, right? He's like 10
Yeah.
or 11-year-old.
His body is dying of cancer. He's not. Yeah, he's not a big tough guy.
So there are some questions about the how this person is coded. We'll look at this page here. A Wonder Woman. I don't. I think there's something wrong with me. What is this? Do you need to go to the hospital? Right? Which makes sense because he's got cancer. Which also, if he was on IV bags and everything, how was they spending a day away? And also, side note, guys,
it's magic. Paradise Island's magic.
Yeah, but Paradise Island has the purple healing rays. They could fix him.
I don't think they do that. I think that just speeds up your healing, which you're not healing from cancer.
That's fair.
So yeah,
we know the superhero universes have never conquered cancer. Like Death of Captain Marvel should prove that to us. It's the one unconquerable.
Fair enough. Okay. No, it's like I've had so much fun today, like the best time. All I want to say is, and I think I'm supposed to. I don't think it should be like that. I'm glad you had fun. I wish I'd give you more. You're a good boy. You deserve more. No, it's not that. My dad's and they're the kids. I'm just so much like. Shouldn't I like Superman and Batman? I don't know, baseball and stuff, normal stuff for a boy. Why is this good? Yes, because boys hate spending time with the tall, attractive brunettes. being engaged in vigorous physical activity with tall, attractive brunettes. It's terrifying.
Really riding on them even.
Yeah, he's sitting on her back while she's doing push-ups.
Which, like, side note, I'm not. While I'm definitely making the joke, he's
into archery, by the way. He's shooting at, so like that's a very masculine activity. Yeah. And he's into sword fighting.
and archery is way more masculine than pop culture wants you to think. It takes a lot of upper body strength to be a really good archer.
He's wielding a sword in that thing too. Like it's like, oh yeah, you're a real sissy boy.
Yeah. But here's part of the so all of that means that this narrative that Tom King is spinning doesn't ring true. And also, like we talked about last week, I can't remember if it was on stream or off stream. But Wonder Woman is masculine coded femininity. So the stuff that she's into are stuff that boys are going to be into anyway. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is I'm making the joke about the tall, attractive brunette, right? And obviously in my joke, there's a sexual undertone to it. But for a 10 or 11-year-old boy, it wouldn't have to be overtly sexual to still be in that space of female attraction where, it's like when a kid has a crush on a teacher, the kid doesn't necessarily want to start a family with the teacher, but having that kind of maternal affection from an attractive person is still comforting to a young boy's soul, right? Yeah. So
it's important to point out that this scene.
In the context of the thing, so I'm saying is in the context of the story, there is no reason this boy shouldn't enjoy spending time with Wonder Woman. It doesn't even make sense in any stripe that he wouldn't.
Yeah. By the way, I was 9 years old when the Wonder Woman TV show came on, and yeah, she was very attractive. That was way before actual puberty, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's great. So yes,
they're definitely thematically setting up the motherhood aspect here, which is which is basically what Tom King is doing with the World's Finest, because he's like this is Wonder Woman's present. World's Finest is very much the future, and that's tied together with Sovereign because of who he's narrating to.
And one of the things you got to look at with this whole subject too is that these two guys are engaging in these robust physical activities that boys like to do. They're not making doilies. They're doing sword fighting and horseback riding and all the stuff that guys like to do. And if you're a mom of boys, you roughhouse with those boys. That's what happens. Which is why, guys, tomboys are the best wives. They're amazing. So, but that's all part of this plan. And so, like, for him to feel like uncomfortable that he's like enjoying this time I don't think that makes sense. It's like he's trying to draw a point. So he says, shouldn't I like boy stuff? Is it because I'm sick? Right? It's because I have cancer, and that's why I'm like this. Why God made me sick? Did God? Yes, God gave you cancer because you like hanging out with tall, attractive brunettes. It doesn't even begin to make sense. I don't care what your opinion of God might be. This conversation, like, it's thematically, it sets up these things about Wonder Woman's personality, and I appreciate that. But like I can't imagine a world in which a kid would come to this conclusion. I can't conceive.
So
Maybe someone would inform me. Am I being bigoted in my assumptions about inner workings of this kid's brain?
No, but I think you might be going. I think you're going a little too far with it, because part of what's being set up is the idea of like, you're a boy, you should like American baseball, hot dogs, and Superman or Batman. Like, that's who you should like if you're a young boy in the DC universe. And yet he is like, my make-a-wish was to go spend a day with Wonder Woman. Now, a lot of like the prepubescents would be like, that's actually the choice I'd make. But like, if we think about it from
pubescent, yeah.
Post-pubescent, yeah, sorry. Yeah. But if we think about like what they're going at here is that, you know, you're a young boy, you should be looking up to the masculine figure,
right,
as opposed to looking, because he doesn't just want to spend because he's attracted to her, he looks up to her. And so like the narrative here is that, you know, the normal thing to do is for you to look up to Superman, which, by the way, is the objectively correct answer in this. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So
can you feature Isaac's comment on the side there? He's more active with cancer than I am full health.
It's the magic of Paradise Island.
We do need to move on. We got to
we're never gonna get through this.
But once again, I mean, this is the thing where, like, okay, so this guy is at the age where he's probably still a mama's boy. Plus, he's had this long-term childhood illness, so nurturing is going to be something that he's looking for. Yet he obviously likes those. Even if he can't admit it to himself, he likes those red-blooded, you know, boy things, because that's what he does with his free time. He goes to Paradise Island where he can magically do all the stuff that he would be doing if he wasn't racked with cancer. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of these things where, and I do appreciate in the story, in this isolated story, Wonder Woman having this warm moment right before she goes to kill a bunch of dudes. But still, I think I appreciate that. But the framing, it's just like, it feels to me like Tom is trying really hard to make you feel bad for being a typical dude who likes to have a beer in the afternoon after work with the guys. It just really feels like he's trying to make you feel bad about that. If you've ever told a kid he needs to man up, maybe you're the villain. I mean, it just really feels like that's what he's trying to get at.
This is a feminist book, and we have definitely a feminist writer doing it, so it's not surprising. It's like, and that's one of my things is that it's like, okay, it's on brand. Even if I don't like it, or if it's not my preference, it's on brand for the character. So I can't get, I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, this is what it is. I'm not surprised. Oh no, there's feminism in the Wonder Woman book. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do love that line right there. I've known cruelty and I've known love, and I choose love. It's like you say, they're trying to downplay the brute Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman who
Greg Rook is Wonder Woman.
The one that cracks skulls and breaks necks and waves
the neck
swords
snapping,
around.
which gets the neck snapping distinctly gets called out, I think, by Tom King's run here in a future issue. So like, it's something that they know. I think that he's distinctly trying to push against.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do like to say, like, and this is one of those moments to give props to King in this. I think this moment specifically catches of that personality that we want out of Wonder Woman, somebody who's not just rushing in, cocksure, no pun intended, and with using violence as the primary tool. I think that is something. So, and I think that then the next issue absolutely veers off the side of that, something fierce. But okay, so I cannot remember how this one ends, but we can probably just leave it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Let me briefly just outline specifically. So issue 5 and 6, we can go a little faster, because issue
Yes.
5 is essentially Wonder Woman assembles her allies or deals with her allies. There's some complications there. Meanwhile, Sovereign builds his anti-Wonder Woman squad. And issue 6 is kind of a culmination of where like the clash happens. Wonder Woman fights against the Sovereign's assembled anti-Wonder Woman revenge squad. Essentially, that's what we're dealing with issue 5 and 6. But in issue 5, whereas Sovereign is trying to assemble his team of anti-Wonder Woman characters, Wonder Woman is actually trying to tell everybody to not help her. So
Yes.
she's challenging all of her allies to duels to then say, "Okay, I'm going this alone."
Well,
That's the pitch of it.
and the framing is a little bit interesting, right? Because you have Diana in her glasses outfit talking to the Brazilian Wonder Woman and talking to Wonder Girl and talking to Donna, and they're basically saying, we're gonna that Wonder Woman is challenging them each to single combat so that none of them can take up and help her, because they'll be honor bound to not, and all that kind of goodness. And then you have meanwhile, the other side of the story, you've got Sarge Steel going to Wonder Woman's Rogues Gallery and incorporating them along with it, and it's just like Sarge Steel into a pig with a pig hand that is metal, but the metal is not part of his body. So why would the hand hoof change to a robot pig hoof? I don't understand.
Because she's magic. She uses magic, not logical science, to do it. So yeah, the Amazonian, is it Amazonian Wonder Girl or Amazonian Wonder Woman? You call her
I'm not
Amazonian
sure.
Wonder Woman,
I think she's a Wonder Woman.
But yeah, she's tiresome. I've never encountered her before, and I don't like her.
Yeah.
I
don't know how much of that is
Girls
King's
already
writing, but it's very repetitive, very reductive.
Yeah. This is the problem with kind of the same thing with the Batman family, that you not only have a Robin, you have like 4 Robins now, and you have to deal with all of them.
Well, and it would be one thing if you could swap them out between things. And so at least you have, you've got the Jason story, you've got the Dick story, you've got the Stephanie story or whatever. And so you could have a large cast of characters that, roll in and out. But it does seem like when you have one, you've got to have the whole gambit all there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And having to, imagine having to do this every time you want to have a story where it's just Wonder Woman against something, and you have to explain why all of the Wonder Girls are not there. Not just why one Wonder Girl isn't there, but all of them have skipped this. It's kind of, it's almost needless, except that it will come into play later. I understand, but it's like this is a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking, and it's not interesting.
Big surprise.
Well, the other thing about it is that as somebody who's done archery, and I'm not the world's most skilled archer. I'm not going to pretend that I am, but I've done a fair bit, and this 1 arrow, 2 arrow competition that they have here is just like, that is not how any of this works.
Yeah.
And when you start getting more than 2 arrows knocked, like, your ability to control them over any distance is and like, that's not how you'd hold and knock that many arrows.
Yeah.
It's just like, honestly, it's okay. I see, it's a comic book, not everything's realistic, yada yada yada. They need to have some sort of challenge on there, but it's supposed to feel like badass every time. It's supposed to be like, and meaner and tougher, and I'm just like, it's not how that works. It's not how that works. It really took me out of my suspension of disbelief. And I am reading a comic about women who were birthed by the gods. Oh, I was waiting for Twitless to snap back at that, but he's not even here.
So
he has to step out.
Any chance this is supposed to be a callback to her original tournament when they were deciding who was worthy to?
Mm-hmm. No,
definitely, and the fact they've already touched on that earlier in the story, I think, reinforces that. Before Paradise Island Day.
What's funny about this one, and I this is something I actually kind of like, and also kind of had a problem with, is the fact that some of them challenge her to traditional Amazon kind of activities.
Mhm.
And then I think it's Donna Troy who
Yeah.
basically says, "No, we're doing this in we're doing this in Mario Kart or Street Fighter."
Street Fighter.
Injustice
Well,
2.
and there's a whole thing I want to get in on that one too, because that whole sequence, like it started out really funny, and by the time of the ending, I was just like, okay, Tom King hates me. He hates all of us. But
Wonder Woman's a gamer, bro.
yeah, so so the I don't know much about Yara
When I
4
saw that.
or whatever her name is, so I don't know like how, like if she's just supposed to be extra sassy or what that means. Oh, it's the daughter of Darkseid. That's something that hasn't gotten used in a while. So I did this sequence here with Cassie Sandsmark. I actually kind of liked it because being a fan of hers from the 90s Wonder Woman comics and Young Justice, I thought this was an interesting little like look, and I thought I think King did a fairly good job of getting into her head with this exchange. Although by the time this was about the moment, maybe it was a little earlier, where I just really got irritated with the Tumblr coloring on everybody, because everybody has got a cold nose.
Oh, the nose thing
where it's super red, and I'm like, everybody's got a gin blossom, and I don't understand what's up with that. And I'm half Irish, and my nose isn't that red.
No, that's just a trend, and that's not even the line artist's fault. I would say that's
no, it's the colorist. Yeah, absolutely.
The colorist doing that. Yeah,
but it's just like one of those things where it's like, what is going on with these? What are these girls doing? They're hitting the sauce pretty early in the morning.
Yeah, it's the W.C. Fields look. It's just in now.
I'll tell you what. Anyway, but yeah, I thought this was a clever little takeoff, and the fact that it's an arm wrestling match. I'm not sure that Cassie would really be up to arm wrestling Diana, but I could see her trying really hard. Anyway,
I will say the thing that disappointed me the most, one of the most things that disappointed me, and this is something that it shows up in issue 6, is they set up Angle Man to be some sort of like, he can deal with her like blow for blow, and I'm like, ooh, like, I'm not really familiar with Angle Man, and I'm like, what are they setting him up to be to counter her?
I was really disappointed with that, but we'll
right.
get to that.
I'm just saying that, like, I need to point out the fact that they set it up, and this is something that I will lay squarely on King's shoulders, which is he foreshadows that this guy is going to have something real serious to offer, because he's got some connection to, I think, the anti-life equation, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, he's going to be able to, she's hope. She's representing hope. He represents the absence of that. So we're going to see some real go down here.
Well, and think about this too, right? So we've talked about how much Tom King is pulling out of the super. Well, we've alluded a little bit to it. I haven't talked directly about it, but Tom King is pulling some out of the Superman toolkit, right? With the Revenge Squad and some of the other like elements in there. But one of the things we have here is, so we've got Darkseid's daughter and this guy who stumbled upon the key to the anti-life equation. So this should be some cosmic level stuff going on here. And we have a fight scene that lasts for an issue, right? And I don't know if it's my recent reading in the world of Japanese comics, but 22 pages of a fight scene for a fight that you spend this much real estate setting up. I mean, it's only within one issue that they're setting this stuff up here. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that we're going deep into Wonder Woman's history. And so if you've been reading comics longer than 5 minutes, like, these are big, heavy hitter names that you're pulling out here, and you get 22 pages out of them.
So that part,
hold on.
That part doesn't bother me so much. It does bother me that as a writer, if you draw attention to it, it's your fault that if there's a consequence of the thing you drew attention to.
And we'll definitely hit on that here in a little bit.
So, but I need to point out the fact that Tom King in this panel, in this issue, is drawing attention to this character and saying that what I think the line he says, she must know the only person alive that could possibly equal her blow for blow was Angle Man. So that is the author of this comic, Tom King, drawing a laser on This is going to be significant. Stay tuned, kiddos. And I went, all right, I'm interested. I'm not even being ironic about it. I was like, I'm interested in seeing what you're going to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to
especially since Angleman has never been a great character.
Sure, exactly. But I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
but I'm like, hey, you have an interesting pitch. This scene, this image is actually kind of ominous. I was on board. I was like, show me something new, show me something interesting. And spoiler alert, he did not deliver. So and that's squarely on Tom King's shoulders. And there's no I will say this unequivocally, as a writer, there is no excuse for this. At all.
I have to say, it reminds me of the time that Batman took the 10-eyed man and made him like a cult of fighters who all, use just, it was the thing about, they're really good with their fingers. They can fight blind. And, because the 10-eyed man was a lame character from the 60s who had his optic nerves sent through his fingers, that he had 10 eyes, and it was stupid, and then they did the cult of the 10-eyed man, and they're actually like martial artists. And that was, an interesting way to try to bring back an old Silver Age idea, but make it something that works for now. And so I was thinking that that's kind of what they're doing here. They're taking him, who's always used an angle, like he had a weapon that was just like a measuring triangle, and he aimed it at people and lasers came out. And It's like, I don't get it, And yeah, I was really hoping that he'd do something with it. And it's kind of like, it's good in concept, but he doesn't do anything with it.
Thematically, if Wonder Woman represents hope, and he has found the key to the anti-life equation, which is in many interpretations essentially is the opposite of hope. Thematically, you have a wonderful, cool showdown ideologically between two, forces, essentially, metaphysical forces. And it's like, ooh, I'm down. Show me something interesting. And like he just dropped the ball. That's all I can say. He just completely dropped it.
Here's what's getting me here. Okay. Are you saying there's actually 22 pages worth of fight scene?
It's mostly, yeah.
It's mostly, and if she says
it starts on
four panels on that.
Starts on page 1. It's actually, to be honest, it's one of my favorite. Because it's like a full issue fight scene. I actually kind of liked it because I was like, oh, hey, we used to have.
We'll get there in a moment. Let's get to it.
Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the last contest between Donna, and here is a situation where I found myself super irritated with. When I turned the page and I said, and it was like, oh, it's here it is. Here's the Titan's Tower. Here's Donna. Here's this video game, and they're going in to talk about the they're making canon the framing from the Teen Titans cartoon, where Beast Boy and Cyborg are just huge gamers that play all the time. And I kind of like that, right? That was kind of fun. I kind of didn't like it, but I kind of liked it. Does that make sense?
I think there's a miss. They should be playing Injustice. Like you literally have a video game.
That's not what they're playing. Sure looks like it.
That's not the cast from Injustice.
Yeah, they're playing regular. These are stock characters. They're actual. They're current incarnation costumes. So
right, like, but it's just that's a missed opportunity. Like you literally have a video game franchise. Like literally, just do the 10 seconds to like just put.
And see, I'm looking at it from the average citizen should not know enough about these characters to. It's like, isn't Batman supposed to be an urban myth?
Not anymore.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. After from the New 52 on, he was publicly known because
it was just impossible to make that.
It was impossible to carry it on with how they did the relaunch the Justice League with that.
Yeah.
And that origin is more or less canon to their thing right now. So I also think she's wearing a Teen Titans Go shirt, which is hilarious. Donna is there. So
that's funny.
So they're playing here, and here's part of the situation with it, right? Is that there's this talking at, they're playing the video game. And it makes a big issue where Diana's like, I don't know how to play video games. Don't hit me right now. I need to learn how to make these moves like you do when you're like 12, right? You're playing Street Fighter when you're 12 and you're like talking to your buddy and you're like, look, don't hit me. I'm trying to learn the buttons. And he's like, okay, sure, I won't hit you. And then he KOs you, right? Because your friends are all jerks. And
exactly.
And they have that play out here.
Mario Party ruins friendships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then they have that play out here, which is fine. It's in there. But then all of a sudden, Wonder Woman harnesses the power of friendship and is instantly a crazy gamer, despite the fact that we have established she doesn't play video games, and Donna does play video games.
Isn't the point that like I kind of get maybe Wonder Woman says she prepped. So the idea is the fact that she's like she was kind of faking being so incompetent, and she actually had trained at video. The funny thing for me is the image of the fact that Wonder Woman actually prepared for this, and I want to see the montage of how she actually did like a 72-hour stint where she just like gamed constant, because that's what she would have had to have done.
Yeah, but that's not like okay. So if
she
Donna
said she
has
prepped, she's been playing games.
Yes, but in competitive fighting games, you don't get good in 72 hours, right?
She's Wonder Woman. She's okay. I know. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
She went to the Paradise Island gaming room and used the gamer helmet.
But that's what she was doing with the Make-A-Wish kid.
Yeah,
playing games.
But Rhys, it would have been funny to have actually seen. I know we're laughing about this. It would have been funny if they'd had done one panel, just one, where when she says "I prepared," and they actually show her doing something like that, and I would have bought it instantly if they'd done that.
Okay, if they would have had this scene that Isaac suggests, they would have had one panel of this scene.
Right. Yeah.
I would have forgiven it, but as it is now, all it is a bait and switch, where Tom like wrote himself into a corner and is like, "Oh wait, I've just explained how awesome Donna is at video games." But she can't win because I have to have my awesome last page that I've already decided on. So do you know
what's interesting? I got to jump in here because actually I watched I'm not a fighting game expert, but I watched the fighting game community for years. You know what's fascinating, and it also betrays how Tom King doesn't know gaming. But if he'd taken 10 minutes to talk to a couple gamers during actual tournaments, it's been pointed out that people who know the game and know the fundamentals will sometimes lose at least one round, just usually one, but they can lose a round to a random button masher, because button mashing like defeats it works against all your training. So what would have been really funny,
Luigi wins by doing nothing.
What would have been really funny is if Wonder Woman had been like, hey, I did this for 72 hours, so she's able to actually use that to actually get to win a set. Now, what will typically happen in a fighting game setting is that after the first set, the best 2 out of 3 or whatever, the actual person who knows what they're doing will adapt to the button masher and clown on them afterwards. But there's these funny moments you can watch them where someone who really isn't that great at the game can actually usually get an initial advantage just by due to the fact of them being chaotic and not being able to anticipate the button mash.
Well, it's funny you say that because 30 seconds ago, because of how these things streams out, the chat got ahead of you there. Nanji says fighting games are so unintuitive that you can't just use intuition to get competence. And then Isaac says, "Oh, she's just a button masher."
Exactly. They should have played into that. It should have been. It's like, I'm better at this game than you, and Wonder Woman's just mashing the button controller.
Well, the question is, does anyone involved in this industry know anything about video games, or is this just like what always happens in film?
They should. That's
okay. So here's why they should. Comic book people have been moaning and grousing for 40 years that video games are stealing their readers, and they won't educate themselves about why people are playing video games. Your industry deserves to die. If that's what you're going to do with it.
So the answer is no. He does not know anything about video games. This is just like what happens in Hollywood.
I think he might know a little more than the complete ignoramus, because at least the controller looks like correct.
Well, that might not be
that's the artist.
The artist.
That's true.
Went to go look up a PS2 controller.
I think that's a PS.
It's probably a 3.
That's a PS. No, it's a PS4 at least.
I hate you.
What?
that's a PS1 GX5 as opposed to a PS1732.
I mean,
those don't exist. We're not idiots.
Cartoonicus, you bought me a PS4 controller. That's why I recognized it. You bought me a PS4 controller for my PS3.
I went online. I looked up PS.
That's the most amazing thing ever.
Well, there you go. As a matter of fact, it's kind of proof, right?
Anyway.
Okay. So
So the issue basically just ends with the she defeats all her 3 allies, and they come back at the end and say, "No, actually, we're screw the rules. We're gonna help you anyway." That's basically where issue 5 is.
And it's just, and they have one scene where they've got all the villains assembled, and then they've got another page, like 2 pages later, where the Wonder Girls are just like, you can't tell us the rules because we don't, none of us grew up on the island, so we don't care about your stupid rules. So I don't know what's up with that, but there you have it. Also, not really a fan of this Wonder Girl costume. Just gonna say that. Anyway, so
we're ready. I think we're ready to because, like I said, we are getting late. So let's talk about issue 6, because issue 6 is the payoff for the first aspect of this arc. It is the build that we've been building up to this kind of big showdown with the forces of Sovereign and Wonder Woman, essentially. And this is essentially supposed to be the big first major payoff for what Tom King is setting up.
I do also want to point out that I really dig this cover. Like, the use of negative space is really fun. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Fair. Okay, so here we are, issue 6.
Okay, and this is I'll tell you right now, man. I have such mixed feelings about this whole issue.
Let's start with the positives.
You've got at first I really like the setting, right?
Okay.
I've been to DC.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Monument is insane. It's absolutely nuts. Like, you see pictures of it, and like no picture ever captures what the thing really is, right? It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's with this whole, but so with Washington Monument being there, it's kind of cool. But this whole premise is that everything is a lie, right? And so the Washington Monument representing George Washington, but according to the Sovereign, George Washington was just some punk. And so then again, I'm angry again. I'm all mad again.
So let me jump in there for just 1 second. I because he is the master of, he literally has the lasso of lies. I wonder if I wonder if the intended major payoff here is that Sovereign is lying about all of that too. Because again, if he's literally a liar, and we establish he's a liar, we can't trust his version of events by default. So he says, "I'm the king of America, and I've been here all along." I'm wondering if that's actually going to end up just being more of a psyop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be.
So, like,
which would, for a Tom King story, would be frightfully appropriate.
I would just say I have to reserve judgment on that point, just because of the fact that, like, he literally is a liar, the character. So
the other thing is that one thing we skipped over from the last issue is that Steve gets into a fist fight in the mess hall because somebody else basically called him a bitch because Wonder Woman is a traitor, is a foreign enemy, and trounced a bunch of guys, and she got blamed for the one dude's suicide because of all the PR, that business, and so this guy, who's a decorated military officer with like a super phenomenal record, just cold-cocks a dude in the middle of the lunchroom like he's 16. So that was really cool. But here they have this tender moment where they're partners, they're talking about it. He's playing down the fact that he's got a big old shiner or whatever. And then the Angle Man magnifies the power of Dr. Psycho and makes Steve go all loosey-goosey. And I'm not sure what that accomplished, honestly. It's just like telegraphing your move, your punches.
I didn't like the Dr. Psycho should be able to do this without being powered up. I didn't like he is like a powerful character. So I wasn't thrilled with that. I liked the fact that they are synergizing, but if he is getting supercharged, I mean, he should be able to do way more than that. So I'm
he should be able to knock Wonder Woman out, frankly.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
especially the whole bit is that Angle Man's powers are fueled by the anti-life equation.
Oh hell yeah!
Like he should be able Dr. Psycho, powered up by Engelman, under those conditions, should be able to just like unalive the entire planet. Just turn off all their atomic functions if he wanted to.
Well,
You should be able.
horrifying.
He should be able to at least do something grand. Let's just go with something grand that would look really impressive.
It's the anti-life equation.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
they
like,
kind of explain that Steve has like protections to keep him from being taken over by
yeah.
Dr. Psycho. And also it's working very remotely. I think Dr. Psycho always had to be kind of like within a certain range to have a effect, and so
maybe that's what they're doing. Yeah,
and it may be, but I'm just pointing out it seems like a waste of all the. I'm just agreeing with Twitless that it does seem like a waste of all the.
It seemed weak
potential that they built into Engelman, who doesn't do anything other than this.
Yeah, that's all he does. After
That's
all
he
the
does,
setup,
whole issue.
I do have to point this out, is after all this, and then instantly just having contact with Wonder Woman knocks them all out. And that also was like, that was pathetic. I'm sorry. Like, it was literally just like, Dr. Psycho's whole thing is being like a mentalist. And it's like doing the one thing that he's supposed to do, knocked him out. Like, without even showing me, if you'd had a scene, like, or a couple panels of like them maybe having a psychic confrontation or something like that, and that's how he got knocked out, like, I'd buy it a little more. But it's just like, no, he used his power and instantly knocked him out. And I'm like, what? Give me a break. Like, again, he's supposed to be more powerful.
You sure it's not the fact that it's Engelman's energy going through him that knocked him out?
No, I'm pretty sure the narration says like, no contact with her mind. Oh, she's so divine. I was like,
we'll take a look at that in a second, and we'll get there. So we have Giganta bursting out from underneath the ground here from the subway tunnels. Well, they mentioned that they mentioned earlier. I can't remember where it was that they put her down in the subway tunnels or something, or they
use Cersei's magic. Cersei's magic specifically was used to put her there.
Well, that's right. This mentions right here, and then she just uses her growing powers to make herself enormous.
Okay, because I was about to say there's not enough room for a giant under. I mean, the reason that the Washington Monument is there is that that's a solid base. It's not just sitting on top of empty dirt and structure. You know, it's like. Yeah. Then again, what happens to the monument makes.
So at that size, how powerful flesh and blood would actually be against concrete like that? I
mean, she is.
You really come out unscathed and not be like, my hands.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about it is like they're really playing fast and loose with Giganta to begin with, where they're not nailing down what her origin story in the new timeline is.
And she's drunk too. Look at that nose.
No, cherry nose.
She just can't even feel it. That's the ticket.
Yeah.
So.
I like that they did the Wonder Woman spin for a transformation.
I do like that.
That's
nice. Like that.
That's a nice. And again, this issue jumps right into a fight, and I'm like, they don't do this as often in superhero comics anymore. Have a whole issue fight scene. I kind of enjoyed the pitch. I have quibbles. I have quibbles with some of how this plays out. I have problems with some of how it plays out. I like that they did this.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. This is what superheroes are supposed to be, smacking each other around. I like it.
So we have the thing is in the fight scene. Silver Swan. Now they make a big deal in the last issue. We skipped over it about Silver Swan having really bad feelings toward Wonder Woman because she was rejected by Wonder Woman. And Hutch, you of all of us, I think, are the most read and the most fond of I forget her real name.
This was Vanessa Capitelis, was the teenage daughter of the Greek professor who basically was. These were the side characters in George Perez's run, and I say they're supporting characters, but I mean they were main characters in the book. Basically, Wonder Woman lives with them. And she was Cassie Sandsmark before Cassie Sandsmark, because basically all John Byrne did was move what George Perez had to the other side of the country and come up with a new woman and a new daughter who became, his characters.
Well, and
they were basically the same thing. And this,
right.
But
well, and part of it is somebody made the decision to turn Vanessa into a villain.
Yeah, and this was you don't do this to this character. I mean, we grew to love this character. We watched her have her first period. We watched her, having friends, falling in and out of love, having, and I mean, we watched her grow up, and then George Perez left, and the next writer came in and said, "Make her the supervillain." She's changed into the next Silver. What is her name now?
Silver Swan.
Silver Swan. Yeah, and it was just an awful thing to do to this character who is like a main. I mean, it would be like doing this to Cassie Sandsmark, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And the strange thing about this too, and I don't know if this was a factor in here too, but in this story, like the reason that is explicitly stated for Vanessa's antipathy toward Diana is unrequited love. Like,
yeah,
she had fallen in love with Diana, and that could not be a thing for whatever reason, and so that's what fueled her anger. And I can't imagine that was part of George Perez's pitch for these characters. And I don't know if that's been addressed before, but this was the first time I had heard about it. And I was just like, is this a Tom King invention? Or
it's hard to say. I mean,
Super comics, you never know.
Yeah, it's certainly in line with what how DC wants to find, gay characters everywhere, but that was never really her motivation. Wonder Woman was her idol and her friend, and her personal heroine, but I didn't see a love thing from it. But she was also what would you call it, prepubescent back then. I mean, we watched her go through puberty, but she didn't seem to be into girls. But that wouldn't be something you would have done at George Perez's time anyway. So
the other thing about it too is that even in this story, it is also revealed that her accepting the position in the anti-Wonder Woman squad was because she's trying to convince her to run off, right?
Yeah,
and she can save Wonder Woman because she knows that this bad thing's coming, and then they can run off together. And Wonder Woman's like, no, I got to stay and fight, and that's the whole thing there. So, and then
she's there to try to save her. Yeah,
to save her, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So then you got this moment where Giganta pulls off the top of the Washington Monument and then tries to stab Wonder Woman with it.
Do you want a literary thesis on?
No, I get it.
Oh, I don't think any of us have to here.
A Freudian reading.
I don't know that we need.
It's inevitable.
Not even Freudian. It's just propaganda.
No, there's a wonderful, like, there's gonna be it might be me who writes a conference paper on the significance of this one panel.
Yeah, this is what's called a single entendre. Yeah.
That's funny. What's funny, after all of the scroll down just a little bit. So when she actually drops the monument, like Tom King writes Sovereign with quite the vocabulary. He's more of a refined villain. He drinks wine. He's supposed to have a greater command of language.
Oh, yeah.
But then when he describes it, he says which she then whapped down. It's like that was the verb you chose, whapped.
Not hurtled, not thrust.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably why. I think it's like Tom King was like, if I use the words I should use, this is gonna
it's gonna seem more phallic than it already does.
Exactly. So we had to say whap, which
doesn't make it less like.
No, exactly. Which is funny because, like, again, the attempt to avoid it just makes it sound worse.
Crushed.
Yeah.
It's one letter away from fapt.
Yeah, or that hit song by Ben Shapiro.
This stream has suddenly gotten really weird.
We're doing Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. Like, what do you like? This is actually tame. Like, go back.
Anyhow, so we have it. Everybody's really tired. Everybody passed out. Oh, look how tired it is, and let's have another. Now this guy's red nose. That makes sense. Okay, so And there we go. Wonder Woman has single-handedly saved Vanessa by stopping the Washington Monument from crumbling down on them.
Yeah, she
Because this is here's the thing about this. It's like that's not how masonry works, guys.
I
That's
know,
fine. It's just, I don't, that doesn't bother me at all. I'm fine. It's a good image. I'm fine with it.
Okay. So we have this thing, and then she throws it, and it tips back somehow. I'm not sure how this first panel here on their left. I'm not sure how that can happen to have the connecting panel from there, but let's go ahead and move past the physics of all of it.
She thrusts it back, and
Yeah. There you go.
There's never enough time to have evacuated the Washington Monument. Nobody had any idea that this whole battle was coming to this area.
They mentioned that they had evacuated it before.
Who did? The villains?
Yes. They wanted this to be it's mentioned in the narration. They wanted this to be a no witnesses, essentially.
No witnesses.
So they called in Giganta
Right.
in the middle of Washington, D.C.
They evacuated everybody. It's fine.
Have you ever heard of satellites?
I don't know.
Tom King cannot exist in a world with technology. So actually, superheroes couldn't exist.
No, I was gonna say, like, you can do this easily. Again, you just write a panel where you explain how you've isolated the area. Like, it's just better.
It's fine. Let's move on.
But I will say, this is interesting. After the debacle of issue 2, where they just show how incompetent the use of military force was against Wonder Woman, which really bugged me. I actually like that the plan here, from a thematic side, was actually pretty legit. It was like we threw a bunch of challenges at her. She's kind of bruised already. And then we threw in a powerhouse like Grail. And it's like, it's basically, it would be like running. It's basically the gauntlet, right? Where it's like you ran Batman through everyone and then had him fight Bane.
Yeah.
It's like,
except that first part of Nightfall was like 20 issues. And so
sure, that's fine. But at least for a fight, I like the setup. Again, it's like running Superman through like everybody and then now fight Doomsday. It's like from a thematic side, it really does a great job of raising the stakes. Because it's like, like this is a hard fight if both of you, if you're both at full 100%. And Wonder Woman's not. So I was like, oh wow, we actually
it sounds like they planned it out too.
That's what I like. And I'm sitting there going, like, this was decent writing. I'm sorry. And I low bar.
Can we scroll back up though? Because there was something.
So many superhero fights have just unlearned all the lessons that the previous creators and masters have taught us since the Golden, Silver, and Bronze. And
so, little side note here: Darkseid's got a stony face, right? That's the whole purpose of the complexion. His daughter, who does not have a stony face, also has a red nose.
Scroll back a little further though to when she first shows up. I was only scrolling through these originally to get to World's Finest.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was Raven.
I can give you that.
That's If you're up on your lore, it's pretty clear it's who that is.
Right. It also mentions it earlier in the thing, but
I can
also see not recognizing that if you're just scrolling through it to get the other thing too. So
and I've never heard of her before, so I'm not up on my lore.
Grail was hilarious because when she was introduced, she was an infant, and she's literally a baby that they wield as a weapon who has the Omega beams, which is a hilarious panel of them wielding an infant baby as a laser beam weapon. It's retarded.
Laser cats.
So how did they age her up?
Oh, it's been years they've introduced her, so I don't know
anyway.
But nobody else aged that way. I mean,
they've aged her up for a bit. I don't remember the exact details of it.
Time dilation.
They used the evil science of apocalypse, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So anyhow, they have this big drag out, drop down fight between these two gods or demigods or whatever, and it's a lot of punching. Sarge Steele gets kidnapped. It's great.
And then she uses her war cry. No, thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Look at that.
This is when it really became the war cry, because she's using it.
Just so polite.
Let's look at the dialogue. Let's see if it makes sense for her to say no thank you. You are nothing. Look at you. Accept that you were defeated and die. No thank you. That is a conversation that makes sense. Okay.
It kind of does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even saying it's a winning slogan. I'm saying, but I can see what he's trying to do. You know, he's not trying to be like for Valhalla, you know, or Themyscira. He's trying to make her less of that warrior. Like, again, they're trying to make her be like, you know, essentially the adult in the room. Sit down. But
so then she passes out. Okay.
Yeah.
To be continued in Wonder Woman 8 as we take a break for the next issue for Wonder Woman, Superman, and the Space Mall.
That was so okay. So again, the group editors are out of their minds because
Space Mall.
Yeah.
I don't even mind. Actually, I'll be honest. I love the idea of a Space Mall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But for goodness sakes, guys, that should be a Young Justice story with those kids back, like when Peter David was doing Young Justice, because he got it. Where it's the thing we tried to do with Forces, where it's serious and jokey at the same time. It's the marriage of those two things, and so you have some of those exaggerated overplays, and you have the real superhero stuff going on there.
Heck,
And Young
World's
Justice
Finest could have done that.
What?
World's Finest could have done that.
Yeah, definitely. But thanks to Jeff Johns, those days are completely over. But that's where a Space Mall should happen. So the
intention for it, I think, was they wanted to do an issue specifically about because I think the issue fell on one of Batman's birthdays. I think it was like also the birthday for the character as well, like in the like DC company essentially. So I think they wanted to celebrate that. I think this is where I go back to the group editor, right? Because your group editor, I think, is like, these are the people who are supposed to help you plan what stories are going on, what different teams are doing at the same time, so that when readers experience these stories, that they're like, it's not a mess, right? And so you don't want, and we've heard about behind the scenes. Well, sometimes they do. Like historically, there have been many places where we had solid editors, Jim Shooter being one, but like there's also been people who, I think it was a Carlin, right? Like for Superman, there are people who they had like whiteboards, and they had like, okay, we're doing this plot line, we're doing this plot line after that. This other group of people who are doing a plot line for a different character are doing this. So maybe we shouldn't do this particular story at this time, so we don't have two stories that like trip over each other's toes. Superhero comics for years have actually had, and this is what makes it so unfortunate. We have a history of doing this right. And of doing it better than this, and of not having it be a mess. But when you have a comic where you have a storyline going, and then suddenly, and this is panel 1 of the next issue, where it says this comic takes place between issue 5, and it was literally like, hey, we're gonna jump 2 issues ago, and it's like, what are you doing? And then like I think it's the issue after that, or a couple issues after that, where then they jump into Absolute Power, and it's just a freaking mess from a scheduling. What is going on with who is just doing the scheduling of the stories? They're making a mess, and these are unforced errors. These are things that are not like, wow, it's super complicated. It's like, dude, just like have a few more Zoom meetings where you put this stuff together, so the jigsaw puzzle doesn't just like
just use a Google Calendar.
Come on, this is not.
It has anything to do with artists not getting their work done in time?
It could be. But Hutch has a thing to say.
Yeah.
This is the basic problem that I've been talking about, is that you have all this momentum going, and Wonder Woman's on the run. She's being hunted. She just fought off an entire military, and hey, Make-A-Wish kid, want to hang around with me for a day? And it just ruins the whole momentum. And then you do issue 5 and issue 6, and notice how it says this is the end of Wonder Woman Hunted or whatever, and she's unconscious. That's not the end of a story. It's like, what happens? She still needs to go up against the actual bad guy. But these first 6 issues are like, here's the end of your trade paperback. And it's like, And then if you get the next trade paperback, it opens with them at a mall, and and they still haven't had the confrontation between the big bad guy who's been making all of her problems, unless he's meant to be the ongoing villain forever in the book, kind of like Lex Luthor. That could be, but I kind of expect this to go somewhere and to lead to something. And it's like, who is this guy? Is he really the guy who's been running America, not America's been a lie the whole time? Or, I'm waiting for the ending of that, or at least some progress on that, an installment that leads to maybe not the big final showdown with him, but a showdown.
Yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice for Wonder Woman in these first 6 issues to have been aware that the Sovereign even exists.
So can I answer? I want to.
I just one thing, and I still. You mentioned in the comments being salty about the Angleman thing, and I want to go back to that for sure. But I am also still salty about how they're treating Sarge Steele, because like that's just a criminal. It's like, if you're going to do this to Sarge Steele, just give the Charlton characters back, because you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Well, we already knew that anyway.
I want to speak to Cartoonicus's query. I don't think it's the artist's fault, although artists do cause complications. But like, we've seen how with artists, there's so many who want to do it. You can literally just plug and play artists if you have such a bullpen at this point of people who will just do it, who even do it for free. I don't think that's the main problem. I think if I were to take a stab at a guess, I think the biggest problem is when you make a bunch of decisions, even poor ones, and you're not properly you don't get the right consequences for it, or if you're protected from those consequences, then you're not incentivized to improve. And one of the biggest issues with the big two that I think have happened is that there have not been enough moments of someone coming in and saying, we are going to clean house now because you guys are not doing your jobs properly. Right. I think there's a lot of like head patting and you go girl or you go guy. I think there's a lot of just, I wouldn't call it toxic positivity, but positivity without consequences for, hey, who is the goofball who made such a sloppy schedule of these stories where they're tripping over each other, repeating each other, making a mess of the experience. And you need someone like a Jim Shooter to come in and say, if you do this again, you're fired. And I think comics for years have not had those things happen. I think they've gotten a lot of just extra chances and third chances and seventh chances. And there's no incentive at that point to actually make the appropriate improvements. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that.
So in other words, this is just what's been happening in the MCU.
I mean, that's there. You can see a lot of, there's a lot of comparisons you can draw between what happens to the storytelling of both the cinematic universes, how they've repeated some of the same problems. Now, what's interesting is that because the films are throwing around such large sums of money, that there actually have been some cleanups that have happened. The DC universe got gutted recently because it was like, you've made a mess of this. And the MCU recently, if you pay attention to some of the rumors that have been swirling, apparently the MCU, according to rumor, has quietly fired a bunch of people because of how Phase, whatever the previous one was, that was a mess and lost a lot of money. But the comics have been they've been a cottage industry. So they've been kind of insulated since both of them have been bought out by larger entities. They've been kind of insulated for a very long time. And I think that insulation has really created a really weird environment where they're kind of protected from the full consequences of the decisions they make. And I think it leads to this or contributes to it.
Yeah, they're not expected to make a profit or die. It's like, we're just keeping you alive because we need the characters. And that's really it. Yeah. Comics, do those still exist? Well, keep it running. It's only a few million that we have to run. That's kind of how they look at it. It's not really. Yeah, that's what it is.
And it's basically like sinking money on free advertising. So that's the.
Who are the 3 good ones according to Fizz Chozo?
Yeah, because I disagree with that statement. I think there are more than that. But I think a lot of it has to do with it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's been done well, but I think there are definitely more characters that are interesting.
Egg foo.
You're saying 3 good comic characters?
No, Wonder Woman's villains.
Wonder Woman's villains.
Oh.
There's only 3 good ones.
Because I would say Dr. Psycho is
Yeah.
good. I would
Dr.
say
Psycho is at least interesting. I don't know that he's ever used well, but he's
I'll give you that.
he's
Dr. Poison. I really like Dr. Poison. I think was it Paula Van Gunther from the Golden Age stuff was really good. Cheetah. He says Dr. Psycho, Cheetah, and Ares.
I wasn't kidding. I see Jim Tuner's on dropping what I'm. Egg Foo was cool.
Egg Foo was like a self-aware like AI robot thing, right?
No, not in his original incarnation.
His original incarnation, he's actually a being, a person.
Yeah, he's a giant egg.
Giant egg.
Yeah. Who speaks in a really bad Asian fake,
He had a prehensile mustache. He tangled Wonder Woman up in.
Yes, a very long Fu Manchu mustache that could stretch out and grab people. And
Fizz.
Was he magical?
They made a modern version of Egg Foo, and he actually looked pretty legit. I liked the modern incarnation as well.
Yeah. But he refuses to be called Egg Foo now. He's got like a Chinese name.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, that might be fine.
Too bad Eggman's taken. Okay. Anyway, can I choose Martinson himself?
Marston?
as a villain. Marston as a villain.
Marston.
I don't see why not. Egg Foo was created by Robert Kanigher.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And he also had like a brother of Egg Foo named Dr. Yes.
That's
Dr. No. Yeah. It was in the Metal Men.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's not a huge rogues gallery, and you'll notice about half of these are modern incarnations, and I mean, Silver Swan was a good character before they decided to make the new one out of a character who was already an important character, and it's like doing this to Commissioner Gordon, honestly. It's like taking Commissioner Gordon and making him into a villain.
Yeah. Well, it's starting to get late for me, but so do you want to do final thoughts on any?
No, I think that's fair. Actually, I think we've hit everything anyway. Yeah. So now we're just riffing.
What is the future for the reviewing Wonder Woman series? Are we going to finish?
Well, that's the question. Do we find this appealing enough that we want to continue?
I mean, I think you knew my answer to that 2 weeks ago.
I feel like we need to talk about issue 8, even though I'm gonna bring. I've been very generous to this series so far. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bring the Fury of 1,000 Hells to issue 8.
Yeah, issue 8 is where, and issue 8 and issue 14 are worth talking about. You could really breeze over the others because they did. I mean, it's mostly filler.
I did not see that. Oh my god!
I think we can talk about continuing it.
I'm out of here. Bye. Sorry, I'm watching Seinfeld. It's like, leave on the joke.
Yeah. Talking about the Silver Swan thing. Fizz says they made Commissioner Gordon's son a serial killer at one point.
They did. Yeah. They did. In fact, they made Commissioner Gordon Batman, a robo Batman.
Jim Tuner says compare and contrast issue 8 to blankets.
Well, I guess if there is a place to draw a comparison, it may happen. We haven't talked about blankets in a while.
It's been at least 2 shows.
We don't have to
mentioned it. We haven't actually talked about it.
Right.
We don't have to do 3 more weeks to get caught up. We could just do one more show where we talk about 8 and 14 and kind of I really the others are not worth spending a lot of time in. Although it was cool to see Ralph Dibny show up in one of them. So in the time, I mean, that's in those awful stories that are almost worth skipping over, but yeah.
Well, that sounds fair.
What are your final thoughts about these 3? What are your final thoughts on it?
My final thoughts are: I wish that Tom King had an editor who had the slightest amount of testosterone in his system. I could tell this guy. The idea that a male feminist is writing Wonder Woman is an intriguing concept, and I think you've drawn out that very interestingly. But the fact that no one will tell Tom no or tell Tom, you need to go back to the drawing board and make this actually make sense. Because the whole premise of the thing, it's like the world. Okay, let me back up a little bit. So in Watchmen, right? Alan Moore explains the whole world and why the heroes have had such an impact in the world and why people feel the way they feel about it. And he has, of course, a long time to do that in. But it lets you know, and you can understand everybody's perspective in Watchmen, right? Like it or not, as a whole piece, whether people think it's overrated or not, the interactions of the people and the heroes make sense with each other. In this book, nobody does anything that is making sense to me, right? It's like Wonder Woman's actions don't seem like somebody who's serious about stopping conflict. The government's actions don't seem like it's just the government is only doing things because the sovereign is telling them to. There's no reason behind it all. People suddenly turning on Wonder Woman because one Amazon killed a bunch of people. The government suddenly turning on all other Amazons because who are legal immigrants, right? Because of one Amazon. I don't think it makes sense. Yeah, that's my take on the whole thing.
But these three issues specifically.
These three issues specifically.
Yeah.
Well, 4 doesn't belong at all.
Mhm.
2, 5 feels like filler, and 6 was at least a well-placed fight scene, although it should have been longer.
Yeah. Can I go next?
Yes.
I would say all of that, and the need to have editing. I mean, there's so much of the stuff. It opens with that whole page of person talking on television, giving you the info. I mean, what a way to open remember when Stan Lee opened a book and it was like, blam, people are jumping out of the pages at you and they're already fighting, it's like, and he would say a lot of words. There'd be tons of words to read actually from Stan Lee, but it opens with action. If you were picking this up off the stands instead of, it's number 4, I'm going to get number 4 because I'm subscribed. So, interesting. I'm going to keep reading because it's mine. I already bought it. If you had to actually be sold on this book and you opened it and there's talk, that goes back in the rack. It's just, there's no, he's had no, okay, here's some stuff you need to convey. Find a better way to convey it. There's, you could, and that whole second, the filler, the one with the women, you could have one panel of her talking with them saying, I want you to stay out of it. And that's it. I mean, that could have been, and then the rest of it is the fight scene from number 5. And then number 6 is wrapping up your story. This is if you had an editor actually sculpting this into a trade paperback with you, or figuring out how this is only the first installment, but where's it going to go? This is so badly shaped. It's not that he has bad ideas or even bad storytelling. I've pointed out a few moments that I thought are lovely, and he's not all in all a bad writer, because like I say, there's some good stuff, but it's so poorly done. He's not trained in the ways of being a comic book writer and a comic book seller. The pull story at the bottom of the one panel that makes you want to turn to the next page, and all that sort of stuff. And, I've done stories that are basically 10 pagers, 8 pagers, 12 pagers, doing way too much story. I'm familiar with having to cram an awful lot into one panel, but at the same time, it also taught me how to not waste stuff, Mm-hmm. And have I ever talked with you about the Quentin Tarantino movie, the Death Proof, that was in Grindhouse?
Yeah.
It's just, I remember Chuck Dixon talking about this. He says, I watched Grindhouse films. Nobody would watch 2 hours of women talking and nobody gets naked. That is not a 1970s movie that would play in a Grindhouse theater. It's not, you don't have women talking to other women talking, and women are talking, and women are talking, and that goes on for 20 minutes. It's like that does not happen in a grindhouse movie. That's the problem with this. It's not that this isn't interesting in a way, but it's not a grindhouse movie. It's the same thing here. It's like there's an awful lot of time spent talking to Donna. It's like too much, way too much over all these pages just to say, okay, you're going to stay out of my fight. And I understand that we're kind of getting some character stuff. I mean, the stuff with them playing video games is kind of interesting in a way, but it's like, man, this doesn't move the story along. And it could go faster,
Can I take so I was going to say, I wanted to take it partially to take a Jim Tuner's question, because my experience of this is mixed, and it is affirmative to Jim's question, which is I do think there are redeeming aspects of Tom King's conception of this. They are at least interesting to me in terms of interpreting a feminist superhero character. So like I said, I know that some of our audience and myself included don't always like feminist storytelling, but if you're going to have a feminist character, it's bloody Wonder Woman. So it's on brand to have her represent that. And Tom King's version is better than previous incarnations on certain points. This sort of balancing, leaning more into love as opposed to just being a violent Grecian, just warrior hero who swings a sword around and, chops people's heads off or snaps necks. She's meant to be more redemptive, and that goes all the way back to her 1940s roots. And so like he nails some of that really well. And he also, like I said, is in conversation with a version of feminism that's willing to buck some of the basic tenets of we sometimes call it the sex negative feminists, the people who are just like, cut off all contact with men, just this sort of just complete isolationists. And Wonder Woman, from Tom King's perspective, is pushing against that version. So there are definitely some interesting aspects there. And these 3 issues, especially issue 4, highlight specifically why I think Tom King thematically is a decent choice for this.
All right. So
that being said, sorry, I do have another.
No, sorry. I thought you were finished. Sorry.
That being said, there are some, while I believe, and I still stand by this, while I think that Tom King is intellectually, from his like IQ, a smarter writer than Josh Williamson is, in a weird sort of twist of irony, he ends up being a worse storyteller while being a smarter one. And it's this weird sort of thing where it's like, well,
not that weird.
Smart doesn't mean skilled.
I mean, but it is kind of weird to me, and I think part of it is that I think King is setting a goal. He did this with Batman, if I recall, right? He wanted to be like, I'm not just telling you one story. I'm telling you a 100. He wanted to be like the 100 issue guy, where his story was like a 100 issue. So like everything he's telling you is supposed to be this part of a grand design. And whereas, like I said, Williamson has from my experience, has been simply just simple, right? I'm here to tell you a Superman story. I'm going to tell you a superhero story, Superman story after that. And things don't seem to have expanded past connections beyond 3 or 4 issues. Overall. And I feel like Tom King, especially with this whole sovereign thing, is trying to plant this mega arc that he wants to run for dozens, perhaps, of issues, and create some. He wants to leave, it seems, this lasting legacy, kind of like what he did with Batman, laughably. And I think some of his problems may stem from that, but the experience of reading it is reading some clunky and puzzling stories that, and I'll zero in on one of the most striking problems, which Mark Waid's Absolute Power highlights, because Absolute Power is like this whole, like, everyone in the DC universe is connected by the secret government problem. But Wonder Woman has this villain now who's like secretly running America. And then Superman and Batman are aware of it. And they're just kind of like, so how's that going, Wonder Woman? And it's like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
can you imagine Superman, like, especially like 1939 Superman, finds out that there's a secret king to America. And he's just like, doesn't seem like my problem. I mean, I don't have a rope. I guess
Yeah.
I'm just giving it to that woman over there who has a rope because they have ropes.
So
and they seem like they're
what I'm saying is that Tom King wants to have this story that is about things larger than Wonder Woman, but he also wants to make the story in it paradoxically only about Wonder Woman. And that is creating a huge it's creating such a paradox that it's unignorable. Like, it's something that is causing a huge barrier, because you're having a whole universe of superheroes. They're just like, well, Wonder Woman, how's that Secret King thing going? And it's like, wouldn't we all be connected to this and be fighting against it? Which is exactly what they do in Absolute Power, which interrupts this very story. And it just like paints this all in stark relief. And it's like, okay, Tom King, I see you want to tell a story that's like 100 issues long. You're gonna have to do better. So we end up with this very perplexing roller coaster where parts of this will like nail aspects of Wonder Woman on the money, and even if they're not my preference, and I'll go, cool, I'm on board with some of this, and then he'll like shoot himself in the foot in a dozen other places that are just like act as complete barriers to the storytelling. It's very bizarre to read his run. Like I said, as opposed to Williamson, who I'm able to really kind of get pretty quickly. Okay, here's what you're good at. Here's what you're bad at. Tom King, it's just like, what the hell is this? So like, and it's what the hell with good stuff and then bad stuff. Like, I don't know. Weird experience.
I think Naji's picking up on some of that here. And why did they just call the Justice League is a common problem. And
yeah,
and in earlier iteration of the Justice League, before Grant Morrison launched the main 7, that wasn't such an issue because they weren't like, he had one or two heavy hitters.
So let me address that comment specifically though, because this is one more thing that Tom King does, right? Which is you used to be able to hand wave this, where it's like these different superheroes wouldn't call each other, but they didn't draw attention to it. So when Batman dealt with his problems and didn't call Superman in, he didn't sit there to have a panel going, you know what? I'm not going to call Batman today or Superman today. Because once you draw attention to it, it's like, now you've made it a thing. I'm able to pretend that there's layers of separation until you draw attention to it. Tom King does this, where he'll have Superman and other characters like comment, hey, this whole sovereign thing's kind of serious. And it's like, then why aren't you doing something? Don't do this, Tom. You have to. The way the superhero universe works is that if you don't want me to ask these questions, you can't bring them up, you dummy. And it's
every superhero in the DC universe operates like me. Well, I don't want people to bother me, so I'm not going to go bother them. I hope they're okay. I'm sure if something really bad happens, they'll call, right?
Correct. Right. But you have the only way that conceit works is if you don't draw a bat signal on top of it. And like Tom King will walk straight into that rake, and we'll see, in some of these subsequent issues, and Batman and Superman will like comment about this, and it's like you've committed the one sin that makes this unignorable, which is you drew my attention specifically to it, and then I asked the natural question of, well, Batman probably could do something about this secret government guy, and Superman could probably help with some of the fighting. I'm thinking, I have a suspicion that Superman might be able to help.
Yeah.
Superman might have even been able to save the Washington Monument.
Right.
Maybe she challenged them all to a contest so they couldn't interfere.
We just didn't see that one.
In issue 5, she actually just tells Superman, "No, seriously, stay out of it."
Yeah.
She just
but she didn't save the Washington Monument.
So that's okay. Superman will use his Super Mason powers to put it all back together again.
Yes.
Oh, from Superman 4, I get that reference. Yeah, there you go.
So she didn't have to stick Superman with an arrow in his chest in order to keep him out of it.
She just said, "No, seriously, I know better. Let me stay out of it." And he went,
"Okay." Superman knows his place. So
this is always a problem with you can't have aliens invade Amazon Island because Paradise Island because aliens invading Earth is how it would be seen, and everybody would be like, oh no, we're being invaded. Oh wait, they're just going to Paradise Island. Okay, we'll stay out of it. Because there's things that are too big to be ignored by everybody else, and the destruction of central part of Washington D.C. seems like part of it. And also, like you say, if any of these characters find out that there's a secret king running America, that doesn't seem like just a Wonder Woman problem.
Yeah,
you know. That's yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to read
John-
what Isaac wrote here. That's good.
Still working right now. So the one thing, okay, the last thing I want to talk about, this is a thought experiment on the book before we close, because I thought about this while we were giving our final thoughts. So one thing, if you were to read 1 through 3, right, and then 6, would the story be consistent?
Yes, except for the Wonder Girl's appearance saying, "Hey, we decided not to stay out of it." When they grab Sarge Steele.
Yeah, but they're
And
not.
so
Yeah.
I mean, the slight reference to number 5, which you didn't read, but I mean, for the most part, yeah, it 1 through 3 and 6 would make a good story.
Yeah.
It'd make a good 4-issue miniseries.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's a tough one for me. I think that issue 4 is important for a different reason, which is the setting.
I don't disagree with that. I think he does great character work, and we did talk about that. And I think he does a really good job of balancing the bellicose nature and the maternal nature of Wonder Woman. I think it's
also
in issue 7. It would have been fine.
I think it's important before, though. Maybe it needs to be fit in differently. It's important to me because it sets up the ideological and thematic differences between how Sovereign sees the world and what he prioritizes and what she, in her version of feminism, prioritizes.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is important because she is willing to say, I'm going to put off saving the world for a day to help this one kid. And like, there's like, and I think that's a deliberate characterization.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
I think if issue 4 had opened with them with the parents saying, we're really nervous about you being here, that guy just committed suicide, and they could have summarized what's going on in the world in the way the father is concerned and skipped that whole first stupid page. If they had found like several ways to tie that story into, so it didn't seem like such an interruption that it's like, it almost seems like a fill-in story. Like Tom King is sick. Here's a story that he wrote that could be put in anytime.
Yes.
Which they do. It seems like a fill-in story. It's a good fill-in story about a sick kid. It's a great story, but it's just, it really, aside from that little first page tie-in to, here's what's going on in the main storyline, and here's a diversion. You could have had somebody try to chase them down to the island, and she fights him and says, "Go away," or something like that. Just something to tie it into the surrounding story. It just seems, and 5 too seems like way too big a respite between the plot that's going on. It was building and building and building, and now it's like, hey, I'll arm wrestle you, so you'll stay out of it. And it's like, but it's interesting because it's arm wrestling. It's like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, like the stuff in 5 I didn't dislike. In fact, I enjoyed many of the sequences except for like the archery thing. But it was because I didn't see how it was a pacing. It was a pacing.
Yeah.
And it may be a situation where if you're sitting there and reading the 12-issue omnibus, right, when he gets the whole Sovereign story together, maybe it won't feel that way, right?
Yeah.
But in reading the 3-issue chunks that we're doing, it just felt disconnected from the overall narrative.
I've read as far as 14, and it's not done yet. I mean, it's not even making progress. It isn't, and that sounds weird once I tell you what happens in 14, but it just isn't.
So
if like he says, this is a 100-issue character, that this is going to be what plagues her throughout the whole run of Wonder Woman is going to be the Sovereign, then don't set it up like, here's this main story that builds to something at the end of 6, and what happens at the end of 6 is that she falls over, collapsed. And what?
Then goes the
That's
mall.
not an ending of the story. And what happens is kind of is really stupid.
The 100-issue thing is just me guessing, by the way. I just know that I'm just going off of like what. So I do have one before I
Good
cut out,
point, Isaac.
You keep having one more thing.
I know. My last thing is literally a yes or no question. So I wanted to ask the panel, because a lot of people don't like Tom King. If Tom King is going to write superheroes, this was my initial thesis behind this. Is Wonder Woman the best superhero for him to write? Yes or no? After reading these 6,
I don't know. I still don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to see him on a character I don't care for.
Ooh, yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, neither
I
of those
don't
are yes or no's, but okay.
Okay.
Oh,
we
sorry.
discussed last
No.
week he can actually be funny. So
Yes.
shouldn't he be better at someone like Booster Gold or something that
no, Tom Wood could it's like Booster Gold maybe, but Tom wouldn't respect Booster Gold because Booster Gold is a man's man.
Yes or no answer. Holy crap.
Yes or no answer. Sorry.
Well, no, that was that was a no answer.
Okay, there
Yeah.
we go.
'Cause I-
All right.
Okay. Anyway,
I'm still at a soft yes.
it's maybe. I think I need to read more, but I think it's
Spider-Man,
possible.
Somebody funny, right? Somebody
What?
quirky.
Tom King made Booster Gold a loser. I'm sure. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it. That's the show. Next week, we might, if we can pull it all together, be looking at Doug TenNaples' Power Up. So I've got a soft yes from #1 Marmaduke fan to come on for that. So if everybody else can come, then that'd be great. But I didn't talk to anybody about it yet, so who knows? I'm springing it on the world. We'll just find out. So anyway, we are going to call that. And until next time, get out there and read some comics. They're good for you.
Just not these
Some of
ones.
them. Not these ones. No, go ahead. Read it up. Enjoy. If you like it, I'm not going to judge too much. Bye.